Fringe evolved actually out of lots and lots of conversations over very many years between Bob and JJ and myself about the kinds of movies that we loved and the kinds of movies that sort of hooked us as kids.
We wanted to go back into doing a television show. It had been a few years since we'd worked on a television show together, and we were all fans of various things of this nature, of this genre, like Altered States and The Fly and the old Twilight Zone episode.
This particular notion was really kind of born out of this idea of a man who had done the kinds of crazy experiments and cutting-edge scientific work that would be typical of a David Cronenberg type movie. The Frankenstein idea, but told as legitimately as possible.
I've always been a huge fan of David Cronenberg's work, and I think what really got me early on, I remember watching all of his films. What was great is his movies were always real. They were like kind of these crazy sci-fi stories, but they're all kind of grounded in a reality, and the characters were always real, and the situations were always real.
So we talked and we kind of, over the course of some time decided we could write a pilot together and came up with this idea. We all decided collectively that it would be better not to go out and pitch it and sell it. That what we really wanted to do was we wanted to keep it pure. We wanted to write it amongst ourselves. We wanted to nurture it ourselves, be our own voices, not really let too much in, so that we could deliver kind of what we'd had in our heads. And then once we were done and we had it on paper, people could weigh in and they could decide if they wanted to make the show or not.
Well, originally, the funny part is we were only going to do an hour pilot. That was what sold and what we'd pitched, but you never want to just be constrained by the format of 1 hour television. And in writing it, we realized we wanted to make it kind of into a little movie.
And then we took it out and sold it to the networks.
Fox was there and they were really excited about it, and it was great, and they've been incredibly supportive since we started. And these characters just sort of evolved out of a lot of loose conversations about the kinds of people that we like to put in these situations and the kinds of stories we wanted to tell.
What kind of terrorism is this?
Who says it's terrorism?
A lot of it's grounded, but on the other hand, in the last 10 years, it feels like every time you go on a lot of news sites, etc., you can find that things that were just sort of imagined and used to be science fiction a few years ago, you'll read that in some lab somewhere in Germany, they've now uncovered a way to teleport a molecule from here to there. It's almost gotten to the point, it seems to us, when you really do your homework, that if science can imagine it, you can almost do it.
There's sort of this triptych of characters in the show, and each one of them has a fairly significant piece missing, and an issue that they are sort of grappling with, whether they're conscious of it or not. And the way these three sort of fit together at the end of the pilot, they sort of need each other in ways that they couldn't even have imagined.
The show's called Fringe, and it's about cases that occur at the fringes of science and understood science. But more importantly, it's a show about characters. And the reason we wanted to do this series was that it was about these specific people in this world. And we knew that each of these characters were, for whatever reason, were on the fringes of society. And that we would slowly reveal to both them and the audience why that was, why they were uniquely right to be at the center of this series.
We wanted to have an excuse to have characters on television who are at their most intelligent. And the idea of an Einstein character who has maybe a dark side, it really is a mix of Einstein and Frankenstein. Someone who's a genius, and obviously knowledge is great and it's exciting, but knowledge is also power, and knowledge can be dangerous.
So much of what compels Olivia into the story and into the world, it's like a fog is being lifted in the pilot for her, and suddenly she's seeing that there's a whole world that's always been in front of her eyes that she's never really known before. Our approach was, how do you get the character into that world emotionally? And obviously the best way to do that is to reverse the audience's expectations. For a good part of the pilot, she's working to save the man that she loves from a chemical disease that's spreading over his body very quickly.
It's difficult for her to have a relationship because of the world that she's in, and she's out there protecting the world while the rest of us are asleep. And when you give that much of yourself, it's very difficult to find the time to have a life and enjoy the liberties and the safety that you're protecting everybody.
And what you find out over the course of the investigation is that there's maybe a mole in the department, and that he may be responsible for, hurting the man that she loves. And the big twist is that, of course, the man that she loves is the mole. So her betrayal and all of the things that she's realized over the course of the investigation compel her to move forward in the series, because she is both motivated by wanting in some way revenge against being duped by this man, but also because she's realized that he is part of a bigger world that may have major consequences on us as a species. She knows that she, from a moral place, needs to be a part of the investigation every week.
I got a call from the studio, Warner Brothers, saying,
want you to do it, and JJ wants you to do it. And I was just sort of like, okay, what is it? And they're like, it's kind of hard to describe. It's called Fringe, and we'll send it over. And you read it, and then JJ will call. It was the greatest opening I'd read, I think, in like 10 years.
We needed to find someone who was going to be a great collaborator and really understand the script from a film standpoint and a love of the genre, and Alex had all that. And he'd worked with a lot of amazing actors, so we knew he'd be good with that aspect of it.
What JJ told me when he called me was he wanted me to come on because he knew that from all the stuff I'd done on West Wing that I was good at juggling character with a lot of other really complicated situations and issues. And that turned out to be very much the case on Fringe, which is that you were doing, you know, the airplane sequence, the tarmac sequence, the green screen sequence, but it was all because the script is so good, very character-based, and you're always really studying the performances step by step and how the characters are growing and evolving and getting to know each other in an emotional way.
One of the things that Alex and Bob and I wanted desperately was to do a show that had characters that would give us opportunity for that kind of snappy dialogue and that sort of fun pace. When you think about shows that have done that before, probably the best example is West Wing, which just had characters dealing with crazy stakes, racing down hallways and speaking a million miles a second. And Alex, you know, having directed, I think, 4 dozen episodes of The West Wing, was no stranger to that kind of pace, that kind of rhythm. Also, with work he'd done with some genre stuff and being a fan of that kind of thing, it was very clear that we'd found our guy, and we're very lucky to have Alex Griff.
Massive Dynamic is out in front of anything and everybody, and it's into everything and things you can't even imagine. And so we had to sort of create a place that is beyond current technology, which is sort of saying something, given that we were surrounded by pretty cool technology.
A series of events has occurred, continues to occur, that has us and other agencies on alert. These events appear to be scientific in nature and suggest a larger strategy, a coordinated effort. It's being referred to as the pattern.
We like to invest our shows with some secrets, and the network knew that, and they designed this genius advertising campaign around these symbols. We created a code using the symbols, and we didn't tell anybody about that it was a code.
At the end of every act, whenever we break, there is an image. There's the apple and the butterfly and the frog and all that stuff. And there are little yellow lights in the frame with them. And depending on how many yellow lights and which image it is, there's an alphabet of 26 letters. So each episode spells a word that pertains to sort of the larger mythology of the show.
If you're interested in following all that, it can, in theory, be a more rewarding experience. And if you're not, you can just experience the show as it is.
Fringe is my favorite kind of show because it takes people that you really like, that you really care about, that you want to be with and work with and know, and it puts them into the scariest situations you've ever seen in your life. And it allows there to be this kind of safety and comedy in the face of utter terror. And to me, that's sort of the greatest combination of things.